Oh snap, even more awesome Nintendo Switch 2 news just dropped. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have even more to discuss regarding Nintendo and the Switch 2. We have a new design for Diddy Kong, which has huge implications for Diddy Kong's return throughout the Switch 2 era, perhaps in both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza. We have various updates on the Nintendo Switch 2, and Mario Kart World as well, straight from Nintendo. But then on top of that, we have another update on Switch 2 specs, and a variety of different people chiming in with different little bits and details for what may be going on. And we have some new information on some other big games potentially coming down the road for Nintendo Switch 2. So there's a lot to dive into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out, I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches on June 5th. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So to start things off, Nintendo on the Nintendo Today app revealed new footage for Mario Kart World, and it's Mario in his kart accessing the binoculars that we've seen in various 3D Mario games that allow you to look around the environment. You can also do in Mario Kart World. Now this is actually something we've been speculating for some time, and earlier this week I put out a video talking about how this may be the case, and we had actually found evidence that it would be the case, something else we discussed this week. So it's actually quite interesting that literally this week Nintendo confirms this feature we've been theorizing on and looking for evidence for quite plainly for the entire world to see. Now with this footage though, there are some other interesting things worth pointing out. We are now seeing more examples of P-switches in different areas for the Super Mario Bros. Circuit, which we have now seen a lot of evidence that these P-switches are totally hidden during races and knockout tours, but during free roam, they appear and they are in many different locations, so there's a lot of different missions all throughout the world. Something else neat that I noticed in this footage that perhaps some others haven't noticed before though, is that when we see these planes passing by, they have sort of like a trail of smoke, and they're actually dropping item blocks. I knew item blocks were coming down from the air, but I didn't realize that they were coming out of these planes that fly over the various parts of Mario Kart World. But there's something else very interesting going on with this little footage here that Nintendo released, based off what has happened over the last day or so. So after listening to a bit of that footage right there, you may have noticed that there is clearly a new version of Super Mario World music in this area of the game. And this is extremely interesting when we consider that NBC Universal just perhaps leaked the title for the Mario Bros. Movie, Super Mario World. Now they've since taken this down, so there's some room for debate. Yesterday I had an entire video talking about how this could have some huge implications, not just for the movie, but for an entire huge plan regarding Mario's 40th anniversary, including other big releases throughout this year and next. So if you're curious on that, you can check the iCard or the end screen. But I do find it rather interesting that we hear this music in Mario Kart World immediately after this leak of the Mario movie also being called Super Mario World. We'll see if that truly holds out. Probably just a coincidence. I doubt Nintendo would intentionally sort of hint at that here. Now Nintendo has revealed that with the quick menu on Switch 2, you can actually map the GL and GR buttons on the Switch 2 Pro controller to other buttons you so choose. So it's a nice convenient little feature here. We already knew that you can map different functionality to the GL and GR buttons. There are these new little buttons they've added to the grips of the Switch 2 Pro controller, so you can have more options with your games. It's something I think is definitely worth appreciating here. Now, there's another conversation that has evolved from this footage that I just find to be just funny or weird. A lot of people are complaining about the home menu for Mario Kart World, or the start screen, because that's what this is. So Nintendo has also, yes, revealed the start screen to Mario Kart World, and a lot of people are saying that this is kind of lame or bland, and I just find this funny because most start screens for games aren't anything too crazy. Oftentimes, it's just like a black screen with white text, or it's something really simple. With Mario Kart 8, it was just a couple image files. It wasn't anything too crazy. This is something that literally shows Mario Kart running around the open world, and there's likely going to be various different clips here I don't think it's supposed to be anything super mind-blowing. I will say, though, I do remember Ocarina of Time had one of the most amazing opening start screens for a game ever. Maybe people were perhaps hoping for something a little bit more interesting in that way, but I mean, just seeing the open world gameplay of Mario Kart World, I think that alone tells you what you need to know for the start screen of this game. Moving on, Nintendo's revealed another little interesting detail about Nintendo Switch 2. On the controller screen, you can actually press the different controllers in a row from left to right, and you'll hear these little cool sounds in C scale. So that's just a nice, neat little Easter egg that we have on Switch 2, and perhaps there will be a variety of other little things like this as we explore more of the menus in Switch 2. Progressing over to what may be a bigger talking point for people is what Digital Foundry recently revealed about the Nintendo Switch 2. They put out a video where they essentially told us everything about the specs for the Nintendo Switch 2, and they claim that this is official Nintendo information. This is straight from Nintendo. Now, what's interesting about this is that, at least in the video I saw, they do not clarify how they got this information. This is not coming from the Nintendo Today app or any sort of official Nintendo channels. What I believe is going on, and they're probably not going to clarify unless I missed something here, is that they got this information straight from a developer, and this developer got it straight from Nintendo. So it's not intended to be revealed to the public, but that is what's happened, and they put all this information out here. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, we've talked about various leaks regarding the Nintendo Switch 2, and most of them have been proven totally true, especially with the specs. The specs have been leaked left and right repeatedly, and all that's really changed is as we've gotten closer and closer to the release date of Switch 2, we've gotten a more updated, more detailed look at all the specs for Switch 2, and so everything I see here, there isn't anything too crazy. However, I will point out some things that people are talking about. The CPU cores and the memory system reservation. Nintendo is apparently only allowing 6 of the 8 cores to be used by developers, and only 9 of the 12 gigabytes for the games. And a lot of people are making a big deal out of this, but what I think should be pointed out is that it wouldn't be the first time we've seen limitations or reservations for developers and games early on into a console's life cycle, and then as things progress, more of that opens up. Even with the Switch 1, as the generation progressed, Nintendo granted access to even higher clock speeds for the Nintendo Switch. So I don't really think we should make too much of a big deal of this. We've already seen a variety of games running on Switch 2 that look and run pretty good, that compare favorably to Xbox Series S, in some cases looking better. And basically what we've come to understand about Switch 2 and what we've sort of expected all this time is that Switch 2 will be somewhere in the middle of old-gen consoles and new-gen consoles. Now, if you count Xbox Series S, that's technically a new-gen or current-gen console, but it's definitely substantially weaker than Microsoft's Xbox Series X. Point is, though, if Switch 2 can get games and look and run well enough, something comparable to Series S, that likely means that a variety of different big third-party games will be able to come to Switch 2 for years to come. But there are other little things that have come out from this video from Digital Foundry that many people are talking about here. So here Central Leak says, "This has now been confirmed. A lot of people were defending Nintendo in the original tweet, arguing that it was obviously a misunderstanding, and there was no way they did remove it." Now, what Central Leaks is referring to here is a VRR functionality through the Switch 2 dock mode. We're not sure if the HDMI converter supports VRR. So while VRR, a variable refresh rate, definitely works in portable mode with that screen, the Switch 2 in docked mode might not be compatible. This is one of the things that Digital Foundry is saying. However, there is perhaps some room for some misinterpretation of what may be going on. As Necrofelipe from Universal Nintendo says here, "I got access to the documentation, which is probably the same one Digital Foundry saw, and nowhere does it say that VRR support does not exist in the dock, only that it is not currently enabled." So that's something I think is important to understand here. It kind of goes back to the other things we spoke on with the specs when it comes to the clock speeds, the RAM, the cores. There could simply be different things that are not currently available for developers, but through an update, they will be made available later on. Perhaps at launch, perhaps later down the road, maybe even way later down the road. But just because it's not accessible now doesn't mean it won't be accessible eventually. And also what's interesting about Universal Nintendo is saying here, he's giving us some insight into what Digital Foundry maybe have been referring to when they decided to put out these fully confirmed Switch 2 specs, is that there is documentation out there behind the scenes, and apparently Universal Nintendo also has access to this. Now, there are others that are really challenging Digital Foundry. As we see here from Nintendo God on Twitter, Digital Foundry, we have confirmed in Nintendo Switch 2 specs. How? No one has Switch 2 console to test and analyze it yet. Lies, lol. Dumb fanboys. Digital Foundry confirmed the specs. You are in denial. A few months ago, Digital Fraudry, as I just realized he's sort of making fun of them, we've confirmed PS5 Pro is 33 teraflops, and then here in this clip right here, they talk about how PS5 Pro is apparently half of those teraflops. Yet, they were able to confirm a while back that PS5 Pro was more than that. And so, what is going on here? I do not think that Digital Foundry is intentionally lying about any of the information they have, but oftentimes when they are reporting or confirming things, they are hearing things from their sources, which I assume usually would be some sort of third-party developer or contact with these different developers. And so perhaps things can be lost in translation, plans can change, room for interpretation. There's a lot of varying other factors here. So this kind of goes back to just until Nintendo officially reveals the exact details, take it with a grain of salt. And even then, there have been cases where Nintendo's been wrong on different things. So you just kind of have to keep an open mind in general. And so when we do take a look at these different Switch 2 specs, I think we should just keep in mind that while this may be the actual exact specs, there is a lot of room for interpretation for how different things may go. And actually, to further speak to this idea that there could be changes, thegamebusiness.com has put out an interesting report. Press warned, no Switch 2 consoles until launch. The game press will not be receiving Nintendo Switch 2 consoles until just before it comes out, the game business has learned. Some media have been warned that they will not have their machine until launch day. Nintendo has told journalists that this is due to the requirement of a significant day one patch. So even day one, there are going to be some significant changes to the Nintendo Switch 2. What will be a significant patch? Hard to say. Some are speculating that this more so has to do with protecting from piracy and leaks and things of that nature, not so much improving the hardware day one. Like for example, maybe there are some significant features that are unusable until this day one patch, like game chat for example. Which also, by the way, may have something to do with why there's so much system memory being saved for the operating system, because game chat is a pretty intensive feature. We also got an interesting rumor from Nash Weedle. Leak Express. Se están filtrando especificaciones de Switch 2, pero hay detalles que aún no se han compartido. So basically here he's saying that there are Switch 2 specs that are leaking out there, but there are some details that haven't quite gotten out yet that he wants to share. So, here it reads, uno de ellos es que el DLSS de Switch 2 está preparado para actualizarse y por lo que he podido investigar, parece que su primer upgrade llegará antes de final de año. So basically, DLSS for Switch 2, that AI upscaling and ray reconstruction, there is going to be an update before the end of the year, so there may be some improvements on that end as well. So the main point from all of this, games and the Switch 2 itself are going to improve and change over time, as it always works throughout many generations, but perhaps in more modern times even more so. And from what we've seen so far, at least in my opinion, the games look and run pretty good, and most of these games are not even in their final form that we'll see by launch. And yet the news continues. Square Enix has recently officially put out that they are focusing on rebooting a lot of their big series. They have this 3-year plan here, and Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be a big part of that. They mentioned Nintendo Switch 2 repeatedly in this graphic here. So yes, Square Enix is trying to right the ship a bit here by focusing more so on their major IP, and it looks like Switch 2 is a big part of that plan. So I would continue to expect some significant support from Square Enix moving forward, even from some of their bigger titles such as the Final Fantasy series. On the note of exciting RPGs coming to Nintendo Switch 2 though, looks like we have some hope for Claire Obscure Expedition 33 to eventually make its way to the console. In a video chat, Sandfall CEO Guillaume Broche was asked about Nintendo Switch 2, and given that its capabilities are now known, on whether a port would be something they'd be interested in. Broche replied, "Well, at this point, considering the success of the game, it kind of changes everything. So clearly it's too early to say, but we're kind of in a situation where, let's say there are a lot of opportunities showing up, way too many at once, and we're figuring out what we'll go for and what we won't. But yeah, it's definitely something that could be interesting." Couple things to keep in mind here, this is a translation, but also that technically Expedition 33 is an indie title. It's not a big, major AAA release, so the resources this developer has aren't as great as other companies. So this idea that they can invest more resources to bring this game over to Nintendo Switch 2, it should be up for more debate. Now, as Broche points out, they're finding a lot of success with Expedition 33, which will indeed give them more options. Now, they have to be calculated and careful about their approach, but because of this success, they may have the resources to make another investment here and bring the game over to Nintendo Switch 2 if they feel it will be successful for them, if it will be a worthwhile investment. Because they are smaller, they have to be cautious about this, because a big mistake like this could be costly for their future. Still though, Expedition 33 is one of the best games of the year so far, a very exciting, amazing looking game, and I would love to play it on Nintendo Switch 2. But if it doesn't come to Switch 2, I probably eventually will give it a try anyways. And now, in what may be the most exciting news of the day, at least for me personally and my fellow Donkey Kong fans, as pointed out by Tidy 80s Ruffy Guy, thank you for adding me on this, and also his best friend Daniel Durek for finding it, on the Nintendo news page. It looks like we have a new render for Diddy Kong. And actually Nintendo Everything put together a little comparison here so you can see the difference side by side. It may not seem like much, but they have gone ahead and changed the design for Diddy Kong. This is already a updated look of Diddy Kong from, I believe, 2021, so they were already making alterations to Diddy's design. But here we see even more. It's more in line with modern Donkey Kong from Bananza and the Mario movie. You can see the attention to detail with how he's expressing himself, with how he smiles and the eyes and such. There's also better lighting. And also notice the changes to his fingers and toes. They are more realistic now. And I think this actually bodes extremely well for Diddy Kong's presence moving forward. In this Nintendo news section from the Nintendo Switch, they actually show an entire trailer of Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong in different games on the Switch 1. And Diddy Kong has a huge presence throughout all these different clips of different Donkey Kong games. And I think this is extremely important when we consider the conversation about Diddy Kong's recent absence from Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza. A lot of people have been speculating that Diddy Kong has been pushed away by Nintendo because Nintendo is afraid of this whole controversy surrounding, I believe, P. Diddy. To me, that always has felt like a stretch. It's hard to confirm for sure, of course. My take has always been that Diddy Kong just has a better chance to be shown off a little bit later. Maybe Diddy Kong will be an unlockable in Mario Kart World. Why are we assuming that they've shown everything in the game so far? And even if he's not an unlockable, perhaps like Mario Kart 8, eventually he'll be added via DLC. And then in the case of Donkey Kong Bananza, there is clearly so many different references of the entire history of Donkey Kong, including many different references to the Rare-made Donkey Kong games, given that they've done so much work on the Donkey Kong games. And Rare's biggest creation, or one of them, is Diddy Kong. So I don't think with all this constant love and recognition of the entire Donkey Kong series and this constant showing of Diddy Kong, that he won't be in Donkey Kong Bananza. We've already seen Cranky Kong and Rambi. There's likely going to be more. Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong are in the Mario movie, And now with this new design for Diddy Kong that's in line with modern Donkey Kong, I think very clearly we are going to see Diddy Kong still be a prominent, important Nintendo character, especially in the Donkey Kong games. We just gotta stay patient. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.